Now we're going to look at a series of essay types. The first is the argumentative essay. Here, of course, argument is king. Winning your argument is king. It's therefore about managing a conflict in a polite and ordered fashion. The key to this sort of essay is the arrangement of the various points you want to make, so that you should always plan your essays, whatever you're going to do, but particularly here, you need to plan what are your main points. The argumentative essay is, of course, slightly different from the persuasive essay, which we'll come to later, but there are similarities. Here, we use an argument to present a fair summary of a situation, but we also are biased. We want to take a view. Like the expository essay, which we're also going to come to, we're investigating a topic. We're evaluating evidence. We're collecting data where we might be interviewing people, we might be conducting a survey. We are allowed to be passionate. We are allowed to consult experts, consult scholarly material, but we need to present our information clearly and to a certain extent dispassionately. I seem to contradict myself there. Yes, be passionate, have an opinion, but restrain yourself so that this opinion doesn't seem to overwhelm the material until the end. Provide the facts. Your reasons, any reasons, must be supported by good arguments. Look at both sides of the argument. You need a well-rounded argument in order to persuade your reader. You need to be able to define and also refute the arguments of what in fact you're going to decide is the opposing or the false premise. So in your plan, prioritize, sequence, edit, arrange your ideas. Form and state your conclusions so that at least you know where you're going. Use paragraphs to structure your argument. In the previous talk on editing, I said that all paragraphs were units in a logical progression. They are so here too. There's a logical progression, and here that logic is about how you are presenting your argument. Points for, points against, major points for, major points against, the crunch, the conclusion. Stay focused. Keep referring to the essay question. If you haven't already got into the habit of writing out the essay question before you start this argumentative essay, do so now. Just write out the essay question on a bit of paper and put it next to your computer while you're typing away. It will really help to focus your endeavour, so that all the time you're asking yourself, am I really answering the question, or have I gone off at a tangent? Am I in fact indulging in some sort of fantasy about how well I write? Because if you're not answering the question, it doesn't really matter what you say, it's all irrelevant. Now, an expository essay, incidentally, which I just referred to, is probably a little shorter, but look at the definition, expository, to explain something. So here we're arguing which is better. Okay? I think this is still fundamentally the 5-paragraph essay par excellence. So if you don't know what else you're writing, always assume you're writing an argumentative essay and go for it. Because almost any essay can be turned into an argumentative essay. For this, you need, as I say, 5 paragraphs, an introduction and a conclusion. I think the introduction should be relatively brief, but there are opinions, particularly in the American tradition, which would say that the introduction should be quite laboured, that you should start with a hook, something to get people interested. Some people think this should be a quotation. I'm afraid I don't like that idea, because I think a quotation should be set up, used, and then explained. And starting an essay with a quotation doesn't really set it up. You have to do a lot of work to justify using that quotation, but if you think you can do it, please go ahead and do so. This in an American system would be followed by your thesis, what you want to prove. Now this is a roadmap of your essay. It's actually quite a good idea to know what you want to prove, whether you're going to use this format or not. And then some people would say that the thesis should itself have 3 points, and that in each case you should be providing evidence to support those 3 points. If you want to follow the more British approach, then your introduction should simply state what you are planning to achieve. It should be as brief as possible. But always, when you finish an essay of this type and you've finished your conclusion, go back and look at your introduction and check that your conclusion and your introduction are doing the same job. Because there's no point in writing an introduction and writing a conclusion which doesn't follow through from what you are planning to do. Paragraph 2 should set up points for and against. In a way, when we say that, we're completely in a topsy-turvy way, because you're always better if you advance first the points which you disapprove of, the points against, and then finish on the points for. We might say for paragraph 2, we want to have the general points. For paragraph 3, we might want to have slightly weaker points. Again, use the arguments against first and then the arguments for. Paragraph 4, I would call the crunch. In the traditional American format, this is where you would advance your strongest points for and against. I would actually recommend only advancing the points that defend your position, the points that attack the opposition, the points that, that support your proposition. And that should automatically follow through into the conclusion. Whether you are following the American system or the British system, the conclusion is brief. Do not start writing an entirely new essay the moment you have written your conclusion. We need to make sure throughout the essay that your argument is strong. So avoid the following things: feelings, emotions, irrelevant examples, oversimplification, generalization, always a fault, false or unreliable sources. A fact can be disproved, for example, if there's sufficient evidence to support it, if there's insufficient evidence to support it, sorry, my mistake, or if it's only partially correct, or frankly, if it is simply wrong. We can, in contrast, support an argument with statistics, with quotations from other authorities, with better facts. But always, when we are advancing an argument in an argumentative essay, we need to have evidence. The principle of this sort of essay is that you are fair to both sides, and that you advance the view, as I say, you advance the view that you do not support first. The other thing that I would caution you about is that you always make sure that you plan so that you do not put forward those arguments you are going to introduce in paragraph 4, those arguments which perhaps we would call the crunch, or you might call the stronger arguments. Make sure you do not introduce those first. Otherwise, all your essay is going to be doing is repeating things you've already said. And that is dull, and this is Tim. Thank you.